Testing. 1, 2, 3, testing. For proper modulation.
Are we good? Somebody
let us know if you can hear us.
We're addressing the side.
Can't hear anything. Oh, no, we got it.
Yeah.
Good.
I was muted again. Well, welcome, everybody. Welcome to an evening with the Drew brothers here in Phoenix. Hopefully everybody liked the suspension setup video. It was kind of
It was an overview.
Yeah, it was a little bit like Leave OSL, kind of working through that, but an opportunity to give people some insight on suspension. We're going to do another one that is a little bit, a lot bit more in depth. So we'll just cover suspension setup, a little bit more of the intricacies. So we'll talk more about sag, which we didn't cover in that. But then we'll also talk a little bit about how to change the volume reducer in the rear shock. So it's actually
we meant to touch on that, but we didn't have the bigger spacer to put it in, so we kind of just went past it. But if anybody's got any questions about how that works, we can answer them now. Or
Jeremy says, "Happy birthday, old man."
Thanks, buddy.
Old man. If anybody didn't know, Rob
I turned 50 on Monday. And it's crazy. 50 was a big milestone for me. So my wife, Jen, and I, we knew with COVID, ravaging still, that it's likely we wouldn't be able to do anything. And she and my shop manager, Amber, got together and put together probably the most amazing party I've ever had in my life. It was basically an open house at the shop all day. So people came and went. And it gave me time to spend quality time with everybody who visited. And it seemed like it went on forever. It was fantastic. So
what was your biggest surprise delivery?
Was you showing up. Rich does a FaceTime call with me to tell me how he's sorry that him and Sarah couldn't be there, and she's with him. And he says, but we sent you a package and it should be arriving right now. And then Dex walks inside the shop with some balloons. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was pretty good. So let's get into this, because we can end up spending a lot of time here. RCC says, hey, 300 pounds. So 300 pounds, looking to fine tune the rear shock. Should he buy a car coil spring and install that?
That's pretty good. So, what you're going to run up against.
You don't have to, I don't think you have to talk about it.
So what you're going to run up against is that's I don't want to talk bad about you, but that's just a lot of weight for the bike. I mean, when you consider the scope of what they're built to function with, that's certainly pushing the extreme. So you can spring it to be able to manage it. And the bottom line is going to be, you've got to get the spring rate right, because if you're undersprung and you start bottoming with the force that you can generate with 300 pounds, you're going to break stuff. So the key is, you need to, as you compress the bike in rugged terrain, you need to decelerate that mass before it bottoms out. And so that's where you're going to start with the right spring rate, and then you would bring in damping on top of that if you need to stop the thing from having violent bottom outs. But with enough air pressure and enough, or if you go coil, the right spring rate for your weight is going to be the key. I personally would go air, just because you have more adjustability. Coil, you got to hit it right with the spring, and so you might find yourself, buying half a dozen springs to try to get the right rate.
And it also brings up a good point of 300 pounds is on the extreme end of use case.
Yeah.
So when Fox builds a bike, like let's look at, we have these Fazzari Delano Peaks, got a Fox 36, got a DPX2 on it. It's a size large. Theoretically, there could be 100-pound swing between rider on that bike.
Yep.
And the suspension has to be effective for that 100-pound difference in rider. And it doesn't mean it's going to be great. Like
it'll likely not be optimized for anybody who buys it, because that would require getting into the thing and making changes that are specific to your weight and riding style. But you can make adjustments with what you have there to get something that's going to work.
Well, and Chris says he'd go with Craig at Avalanche for that weight. He's 260, his buddy's 330. So, Yeah, when
Yeah,
you're
avalanche,
when you're an extreme
push,
one end or the
anybody
other,
like that. If you
get
have the
balancing
budget,
done.
yeah, if you have the budget, you get with a company like that, and they know what they're up against, and they can work the system specifically for you. That's going to be your best bet. But can you work with stock stuff and make it something that you can enjoy riding? I believe that you can.
Rick asked me what suspension I'm running or what settings I'm running on the Sid Ultimate and the Sid Lux. I don't recall exactly what the air pressure is, but I believe it's 180 to 200 is the number. So whatever window that setting is, I'm up closer to like what the 200-pound rider would be. So I ran a little bit more air in the fork to try to keep it from bottoming out violently because I'm riding the hell out of it.
It's kind of cool on the RockShox stuff how they have a table on the pieces that give you kind of a jumping off point.
In the rear, I'm running 25% sag on that bike. So a little bit.
They also have the sag indicator numbers on the stanchions.
Yeah, and I'm playing around.
Was it you that was saying they have that copywritten? Because I always wondered why nobody else did that.
No,
and somebody told me they have a patent on it. So that's kudos to them.
So Victor has a great one. Any recommendations on rebound settings when jumping versus trail riding on chutney technical terrain? And Victor, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Victor's joining us in Dallas for a Ride Series clinic.
Good for you, Victor.
So you're going to get a little bit of that. But yeah.
So what I would say, I have found myself to be an outlier when it comes to rebound. I like my stuff pretty much wide open. And my argument is rebound is the speed at which your suspension recovers from being compressed. And so if you're riding on rugged terrain fast and you're hitting bumps successively at a rapid rate of speed, you need a fast recovery. If your stuff doesn't get back out to take the next hit, you have what's called packing, where it gets stuck down. And the deeper into the travel the suspension goes, the firmer the resistance is. And when it can no longer take that force, it will deflect. And the bike will start to get skatey and just kind of find a way to dissipate the energy. That's not the way you want. And so I run a lot of rebound speed. So no damping for the most part. I'll usually open it all the way up and go one click back in. Now, if I'm at a bike park and you're talking about smooth buff trails with jumps that have kick or takeoffs, especially the first time, like the first day I'm out there, I'll usually turn in, 3 or 4 clicks of rebound and slow it down just so that I don't get caught off guard. Because if your body is in the wrong place and you get in the back seat off one of those takeoffs, it can rebound and kind of buck you forward. And I've had some horrible rodeo rides that I don't want to remember because I didn't check the rebound until I got a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah. So this is a great one. You're going to love this. Reckless F8, Fox 36. He's 220, bottomed out at South Mountain. Said he needs to run 90 pounds for his weight. He's up to 105 to 110. He's asking, should he use a volume reducer?
Yes.
No, you should use 2 or 3.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. So the first thing I would tell you, you can have too much pressure in your fork and still bottom it out, because the problem isn't the pressure. The problem is the ramp.
Yes.
And so how you can tell that if you put 120 pounds in and you can't get 30% sag, that's too much air. And so you've got to add volume spacers to get a ramp in there. I would prefer to overspace my fork and run less pressure, because that'll give you a more plush initial on the top of the stroke.
And so that's where I'm at. So right now I have the 4 in the SL. I'm going to have to put a 5th in and see if that's enough, because I had to bump it up to 82 pounds. And that's a little much for me.
Yeah. The key measure is sag. If you have so much air that you can't get the sag you need and you're still bottoming out, you simply need to reduce the volume. That's the only answer.
Now, Aaron asks, is it okay to bottom out every once in a while?
It is. So depending on the type of terrain you ride on, everybody's got that one drop or that one huck to flat on the trail. I would say if you have a feature like that, your bike should probably bottom out on that feature. And what that means is everywhere else you're going to be using up the majority of the travel. If you set your bike up to not bottom out on one feature, it's probably going to be harsh and non-compliant everywhere else on the trail. And if 90% of your riding is on, roots and chop and things that require compliance early in the travel, you're going to just have miserable rides, all so that you don't bottom out on one jump. I mean, you'd be better off to just stop and walk down that thing and have your bike work great everywhere else. That's what I think.
All right, John asked a good one here. So how should beginner, intermediate, advanced riders think about managing compression and rebound? Beginner, advanced rider, least to most aggressive. So adjustments given smoother Bentonville flow versus South Mountain chunk. So, and because I asked you this, I said, when you go to Bentonville, would you change your suspension setting?
Yeah. So I think the right settings are the right settings. Where the changes come in, like I said, if you're going fast over chop, you need the rebound for a quick recovery. But if you ride slow, you could feel yourself getting bucked by the rebound. If everything, there's a speed at which everything occurs, and as you increase the speed, all of the other things need to pick up speed along with it. So that would be the way that you would decide. For instance, if you add compression damping and you try to push the bike down, it's slow to go down. If you're riding slow, moving slow would be okay. If you're riding fast, you want the thing to move fast. As far as any of the compression or rebound adjustments go, you need to understand that what those clickers do is they restrict fluid moving from one chamber to another. The dampening valving on the piston is a whole different thing. And so in essence, what you're doing when you turn those things stiffer is you're restricting the suspension's ability to work. And that's not good. It generates heat. It's not tuned. It's just restriction. And so my position is you're better off to get your spring rate and your ramp correct, and then open up those adjusters and let the thing do what it's supposed to do. But like I said earlier, and like Rich mentioned, Fox, RockShox, MRP, whoever it is that built the suspension you're riding on, they don't know who's going to buy it. And so they have to offer a product that can work for a wide range of riders, skill level and weight. Now, once you get that stuff, using the tools they supply, you can usually make it work pretty well. But if you're a high level rider, or you just like your stuff to be specifically the best it can be for you, there's several companies out there like Avalanche, like Push, like Diaz, who can take your stuff and your information, and they can make that stuff exclusively the best it can be for you. That's the best you can do, I would say.
And let me ask you this. I wasn't planning to, but do you think a lot of people need that?
I think most people don't need that. I think, and people are going to be pissed at me when I say this, 90% of the people who probably ride mountain bikes really have no idea whether their stuff works good or it doesn't. And that's not, I don't say that to be a jerk. It's just, there's a lot going on in those parts. It's very technical, and there's a lot of things that contribute. In most cases, as you get more expensive on the components, you get more adjustments. And my experience has been that confuses people. And when you turn those in the wrong direction, you make things not work right. And the more adjustments there are, the harder it becomes to keep it simple. Just the high and low speed talk gets difficult. And I tell people all the time, matter of fact, Daniel bought that Specialized Evo, and he took the Rhythm fork off it, Fox 36 Rhythm, which is basically an Elite. That's a fantastic fork. When I built my Switchblade, I bought that fork because I think the black stanchions, for me, seem plusher than and
they look cooler
than the factory. And so I basically told him I'd buy that fork from him because it's a great fork. He looked at it like, oh, it's a base model. That's a great fork. It doesn't have a lot of adjustment. It doesn't need a lot of adjustment. I run it open anyway. But yeah.
So let me say this too, because I know we got 64 people watching. It's a decent amount of people, and I'm sure some of them are like, okay, I've heard a lot of people say they don't know what they're talking about. And in the text of the video I wrote, it's very difficult to figure out suspension setup because there's so many experts out there talking about it. I'm not an expert. I've never said I was an expert, but I know enough from him to know when somebody doesn't know what they're talking about. And I said, is this one, what's going to make this video different? or what we're saying. That's up for people to determine and make their decision. How do you know about suspension? Just give people that quick talk that you give at a clinic, because I want everybody to understand where this is coming from.
Okay, so right out of high school, one of the first jobs I had.
Hang on, look what Chris said.
Thanks, Chris.
Make them feel good.
Right out of high school, I worked for a company called Works Performance Suspension. At the time, I was about an intermediate motocross rider, and that experience at that place.
So I guess we need to say that too. If people aren't aware, he rode.
Yeah, I had a 10-year professional motocross career long before I ever thought of riding mountain bikes, and so with the experience that I gained working in the suspension industry, as well as racing and riding and testing, with that opportunity at work, I literally built shocks. And so I could build a shock from I would take a blank piston, I would drill the valving holes, I would create the shim stack myself. I built the stuff myself. I tested it myself. So I knew what worked. I knew what didn't work. I took some risks. I got on the fringe. I tested with teams. I built stuff for high-level people, and I learned a ton. It was a great experience for me. And although technology has crept along and things to some degree have changed, the basic dynamics of suspension have remained the same.
So now with that, I want to go back to John's question about settings, beginners, and things like that. One of the things that we hear a lot and we deal with a lot at the clinics is people saying, slow your rebound down. Bro, you got bucked. You got to slow the rebound down. Is it a factor of an improper rebound setting most of the time?
So when I worked for some teams, a lot of times I would be at the track and I'd be watching the rider ride the bike, and I could see that the rebound was too slow. And so the rear suspension was packing. When you add rebound damping, that's what I would say, that's a defensive setting. That's a low risk setting. It makes people feel more comfortable because it's slow. But it has, when you start to pick up speed, it has really negative side effects. And so these guys would come in and they'd be like, this thing's bucking me. You need to add some rebound. And I'd go over to their bike and I'd open up the rebound like 3 or 4 clicks. And I'd tell them, yeah, you're all set. And they'd go out and the thing would work because they were misfeeling what was going on. And I could clearly see what was happening. So one thing, if you have the ability to, if you saw in the video, we had a section of the trail that I was familiar with, and we went through it a few times and we got to see how the bike worked. If you have a GoPro or even your phone and a little tripod, set it up on an obstacle on your trail and ride through it, and then film it in super slow-mo, and then go back and watch, how is the wheel tracking to the ground? Is it bouncing off the ground and sustaining in the air and not getting back to the ground? It should ride the terrain as quickly as possible, unless you intentionally take the bike off the ground. So those are ways that you can kind of have a look at what you can analyze your stuff yourself with you on the bike and see, what does it seem like it's doing? And then is there a setting that seems to make sense that it would make the change you need?
So Thomas asked me, what's my ride weight? I mean, generally I'd say 185. I don't carry a ton on me. I have a little toolkit that I usually carry in my bib and a bottle, but let's say 185, but I'm a hard charging 185. So that's
so that's what I tell people. I usually figure about 190 for my riding weight, even though I'm never that heavy for the most part. And I don't carry a lot of gear on me, but same thing. I ride it hard. There's places where I come down with some thunder, and it's violent. So I have to know that my stuff is prepared to handle it and not going to eject me.
Yeah. So Brandon said, would you recommend running the high speed and low speed compression fully backed out, no compression?
That's the setting that I'll go. Here's what I'll tell you. If I go out on something new, especially, and I don't have the ramp right, I'll bring it, and the bike's just smashing through the travel, I'll bring in compression to stop that problem at that time. But I know I've got to address the ramp. Mm-hmm. If the ramp is right, I'll have usually no compression in.
Yeah.
And like if I'm trying to do like a jump line or a certain feature for videos or something that's repetitive, and it's that thing on the trail that I know I'm going to bottom out, then I'll just click the 3 position to the trail on the rear shock, and that'll solve that problem right then. I won't ride it that way because it affects the handling very adversely. But for one-off hard bottom outs, that is a quick solution for me.
So Rick asks, do we have a preference as far as manufacturer goes? And I generally just like RockShox. In my experience, I like the way RockShox feels out of the box. It's way simpler. I bottom stuff out, and when I bottom out Fox, it's violent. It's violent.
So when I started riding for Pivot, I had only really ridden RockShox. I won some Fox suspension when I was riding Giant, and I had 2 identical bikes, and I put an X2 and a Fox 36 on one of my bikes because I won the stuff. And I went out and rode it, and I nearly killed myself. And I spent some time trying to adjust it, and then I tried to ride back to back one bike against the other bike, and I just couldn't get the stuff to work the same. And the main reason is because it was tremendously over damped, in my opinion. With the settings completely open, it was like the RockShox stuff with half the adjusters turned in. And the other thing that I always noticed about the Fox stuff was, like Rich said, when it bottoms like somebody hits it with a bat. And I never understood, because with RockShox, I could ride it bottoming out 50% of the time, and you never really felt it bottom out. Like it had a soft bottom out. I don't know if I don't know internally
like
what they're, like a really plush bump stop inside, and Fox doesn't seem to have that. But so with the Fox, it's just really important that you get the ramp right so that you can decelerate the thing as it's coming down and not have it hit hard at the bottom, because it almost seems like it's metal to metal when it does that.
So Martin changed the spring in his Yari from a 160 to the 21 upgrade, which is a 170. Does he still want the same sag?
Change the spring of my Yari from a 160.
So he did the air spring. It went from a 160 to a 170.
Oh, so you changed the travel.
Yeah, the percentage is the percentage.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you would want the same sag. But keep in mind, so if you run it 10 millimeters higher, that's what you're talking about, 10 millimeters. If you run it 10 millimeters higher, you're gonna slightly change the geometry of the bike. And some people might say 10 millimeters is not a big deal, but it's a very, very big deal. And so I've had times where I like to run a lot of sag, and I've had times like on the old Switchblade where it had a 150 millimeter 36 on it, but that's just a 160 with a reducer. So I would go in, take the reducer out, and I would run a lot of sag, but most of that extra travel was top out travel. It wasn't on the compression stroke. And that for me worked really well. But what I would say is if you notice some adverse handling characteristics, just add 10 more millimeters of sag and you should be right back where you started.
It's a whole nother one. What about Diesel Derek, dude? Buy bike, set pressure, ride the hell out of it.
Rich Drew. I don't even think he sets the pressure, actually. Pick up, and it doesn't borrow bike. Don't buy a bike, borrow a bike, ride it.
You, Derek. Cold trickle, man. Right here. Ride it. Told me to ride the bike, I ride it.
Yeah, and the reality is, if you can find happiness doing that, then I say God bless you, man. You spend a lot less time messing around with it than me.
Rocco said, Rob, have you had a chance to try out Shockwiz?
I have not had a chance. I have one coming. I've got a huge order from SRAM that I'm waiting on, and in that order is a Shockwiz.
You've been critical.
Well, I don't want to say I don't have any experience with this, so I can't be critical, but I really am struggling to figure out. Now, I've worked with suspension dynos in my motocross career, and I understand how the suspension dynos that I worked with, I understand how you could see the graph, and if I had like a mid-stroke spike in my suspension, and I would explain to my tuner, this is what I'm experiencing, and he would point to it on the graph and go, there it is. And then he knew enough about how his dyno worked and what the readout said that he could go into my suspension valving, make a change, and then he would, before I even wrote it, he would retest it, and he would overlay the new graph with the last graph, and you would see the spike was gone. And then sure enough, I'd get on the bike and it was fixed. Now, I don't understand how a shock whiz can extrapolate the information it conveys from a simple fluctuation in air pressure, because that's all it's reading. It doesn't have any more information than just a fluctuation in the air pressure. Now, it can read the speed it fluctuates, but it doesn't know how fast you're going, and it doesn't know how high you're jumping. It's just a fluctuation in air pressure. So now, I'm not an engineer. Certainly smarter people than me created it, and I'm going to be very eager to see when I put it on my bike if it tells me something that doesn't make sense to me, because I know why my stuff is the way it is. It's how I want it. And so other people ride my bike and they say, what in the hell do you have going on this thing? And I get it. It's not for everybody, but I know why my stuff is how it is, and I want it that way. So if ShockWiz says add 20 clicks of compression rebound, I'm taking it right back off the bike and I'll send it back.
No thanks, ShockWiz.
Yeah, no thanks. I'm not doing that.
So it's funny, Aaron, it's a comment, more of a question. People riding $6,000 bikes with marshmallow suspension and rock hard tires. You fix that with CushCore, because we're talking about suspension, Rob.
Yeah.
And
well,
what is
keep
CushCore?
Keep in mind, your tires obviously are part of your suspension. The durometer of the rubber, the pressure you have, the width of your rim, those are all factors that contribute to how the bike's going to grip, how it's going to handle. I would put that under the category of nuance, the thing that we talk a lot about in the clinics. There are sometimes these subtle details that make the difference between a guy who can succeed and a guy who fails. And it's things they're not on the surface and you don't see them. They don't wave at you, but they're the little things that make the difference. And some people are tuned into them and some people are completely oblivious to them. And that kind of setup detail doesn't cost anything. It just costs a little bit of attention. And so I think a lot of people out there would be very well served to just pay more attention and I wonder how many people keep track of their pressure. I mean, does everybody out there check their air pressure in their tires every single time they get on the bike? I do, because it's important to me that I can predict the characteristics of my bike when I ride it. And if the pressures are not right, it's going to perform differently.
Yeah. If you're one of the 93 people watching this and you don't have a shock pump, even a cool digital one like Rob does, digital tire gauge, invest in that. Those are actually, I did it. And now I check a lot more. And what I found is things change over time, especially now when I have a decent amount of bikes. If I shelf a bike and don't ride it for 5 weeks, and all of a sudden I get on and pump the tires up and go roll away, I'm like, man, this thing just feels weird. And I chalk it up to, it's just a different bike. Well, then I check the pressures and they've bled out a little bit. It's going to happen. Well,
and sometimes if you ride multiple bikes, you just might find that different bikes, different configurations require different pressures. It's, everything isn't the same. And when you change one thing, it can have a cascading effect to require adjustments in other areas.
So Eli says, holy crap, I wish every mountain biker was watching this right now, because so many people would be riding better. Incredible explanation, Rob.
Thank you.
Explain again, what's ramp? Aaron's asking, what is the ramp?
So the ramp is in the air side of your air suspension, or the air canister of your air shock. There's a volume of air. As you compress the suspension, that volume of air gets smaller. And because the air spring is your spring, that's the thing that supports your weight. The more rapidly you reduce the volume, the quicker that air spring rate is going to ramp up. It's like a curve. And so what happens is you can add, the suspension will come with volume reducers, are what they're called. And what they do is they just take up space in that air container. And the more space you fill with spacers, the faster as you compress it, the pressure inside will exponentially increase. And that's the support that the spring provides. And so depending on the terrain you're riding on, what you weigh, and the configuration of the bike, those are the factors that are going to determine how much spacer you need to add to get that ramp, to get the support. A lot of people make the mistake of adding a bunch of compression damping to slow the fork down so it doesn't bottom out. But that's not the problem. In most cases, the problem is you don't have enough ramp. The air doesn't have a chance to build pressure to support you, and the fork bottoms out. So you can counter it, you can stop the bottoming by adding compression, but what you're doing is stopping the suspension from working. You're not fixing your problem. You're just masking it with another issue that can have detrimental effects on other aspects of your ride. And so that's not the answer.
And so that leads into Bruce's comment. Bruce says, so many riders make small adjustments, but they can't feel what's going on. So they make bigger adjustments. So they try to feel the difference. Like rebound, in theory, one way or the other, how many clicks should you change?
So different companies, and like Fox didn't used to be as sensitive, but the new stuff, it's pretty sensitive. I can feel a 1-click difference. But what I used to tell people is go in 3-click increments. But if you're going to make a rebound adjustment, and let's say you think you need a compression adjustment too, do one, see how it reacts, and sort that out first. Don't make multiple adjustments because you'll lose track of the thing that's changing it for better or for worse.
So another thing on that, Bruce, and this is my opinion, is due diligence. What we're talking about, you as a rider have to put in a lot of due diligence. And frankly, people don't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. I still don't like doing it. But if you do it,
people don't want to put the time in to learn how to unclip their feet. Let's
not go there.
Much less work on the suspension.
But yeah, I think it's important to try to figure out, and the starting point is manufacturers. Start with manufacturer settings.
Yeah.
Get your sag, start with manufacturer settings, and go from there. But you have to have the same thing. Like, don't go do it in one place, make a change and go back with a 15-pound pack on. Or make a change and go to a
real quick
place.
On that note, let me just say disclaimer. Whatever suspension you have on your bike, it probably came with a brochure from the manufacturer. Start where they say to start. Don't take my word for it. I do what I do and it works great for me and I know why I do it. But I don't know as much as the manufacturer of your suspension does about your suspension. And so you start with what they recommend. And if you can't seem to make it work, then you start to move outside of those parameters to achieve the goal that you're trying to achieve.
And so I think you tried to explain this. You may have gotten into it or may not have, but Clay is bringing it up because he says at the jump park, setting is to go more stiff. So they go to the rail yard, which is quick building, like dirt jump style jumps.
Yeah.
Doesn't really know how far to go, but the ring is always at the bottom. And my thing is, dude, do you want a dirt jumper or do you want a mountain bike?
Well, but also this is another thing I'll say on that. If all you're at a place like the rail yard, you're not really concerned with the handling of your bike. There's really no beat up terrain or choppy descents or rock gardens, so to speak. You're dealing with jumps and landings. And so that's a situation where you can choke the thing down with compression. If you were riding it on a rough trail, it would be horrible, but in a jump park, it's probably going to be fine. And so that's a place where I would say is an exception for compression damping. Crank it up as much as you want to so that your landings don't feel violent.
Yeah.
But most cases there's a landing.
Yeah.
And so I would say get your timing down.
And that leads into what I was saying. You can make air pressure adjustments, but then you're going to have to change those adjustments for everywhere else you ride. So I guess the gist of it is you can set your bike up to work really well for a specific trail or a specific area.
Yeah, a jump park, what you'll find is if you get a hardtail dirt jumper, it's probably going to be the better bike to ride there. Yeah. It's really tough to have fun on a full suspension squish bicycle at any place with dirt jumps because that's not what the bike's not made for it. The jumps aren't made for that bike. It's really, I mean, I understand that if you have a $9,000 mountain bike and you have an opportunity to go ride at a place like that, you're going to do it. Just know going in, the two weren't made for each other. And so you may not have as much fun as you would if you had the proper equipment for that adventure.
All right. So, Kelvin, what pressure did you run the DPX?
Hang on, I got an analogy for that.
Oh,
If you want to go skydiving, don't do it in a scuba suit. That's not the right equipment. You're going to have a bad outcome.
all right. We're going to let that one sit for a little bit. People will think about it. So, what pressure did you run on the DPX2?
Did I run?
Yeah. What are you running?
I'm running 190
Kelvin's 85K. kgs, kilos, dude.
kilos. I'm off on my
220 and
kilos.
230.
I need to call Jen down for kilos.
He's like pushing 180, I think.
Me?
No, him.
Okay.
So 80 would be 165. Or no, yeah, like high mid 170s, I think. It's been a while since my weightlifting days, so I don't know the conversion there, but I think it depends. Like,
well, I used to run I mainly would run X2s on my pivot bikes. And so I would typically run my body weight in the shock. And that pretty consistently worked well for me. There were rare occasions where I'd have to add more air. There was a few occasions where I might run a little bit less. But for the most part, my body weight.
So for 100 and let's call him 180, that's a lot. Like he's running a decent amount. He's running 220, 230. I mean, that's what we're running in the SLs.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing. If you have a bottoming problem, and you need more spacers in your shock, it's not unreasonable that you would get the thing up to 220 to try to stop the bottoming. So check the sag at that pressure. And if you can't get 30% sag at that pressure, you need to add a bigger volume spacer.
So let's talk a number that's really important. And I want to get it out there quickly. Look at the top left where the people are. What number is that?
3646?
No, the people watching.
100 people.
Right. Yeah, it was just 103. Damn it.
That's good.
Pretty exciting, dude.
Thanks for joining us. 101.
Never had anywhere this many people for a live. You know why though? You know why they're joining us? Because it's Chris.
Because me.
No, we're savages.
Oh.
And he loves listening to us gents. There's one gent here, not two.
Do I still
ride my trust fork? And do I believe in the concept? No and yes. I don't, just because
it's horrible to look at.
And that's not why. The Shout, the larger one, was a little bit tough to look at, but it's funny because I rode it. I had a decent amount of time on it.
Now, everybody I know who had one,
it's amazing,
said great things about them, and I'm certain if I had a chance to ride one, I would have liked it. The circumstances were such that I couldn't try one.
Here's the issue. The issue is if you have more than one bike, you need more than one trussed fork.
That's what I told Rich. I said, I typically have 5 bikes. Who's going to give me 5 forks? It's not happening, and I can't afford to buy them.
So here, I think, was the best way that I heard to describe it. There are impediments of a telescopic fork. And what we've all done is we've acclimated our riding to deal with those impediments. The truss doesn't have those impediments. So if you don't then change your riding to take full advantage of those, you're not taking advantage of that incredibly expensive, open to interpretation how it looks fork. And I was able to do that. And for some people, it works better. Bikes are designed to have the center of mass over the center of the bike. The majority of people ride with their weight behind. They get in the back seat. That fork will do you no benefit if you do that. You need to go further forward. I ride aggressive, low, and I'm okay being forward. So when I charged hard on that fork, the harder I charged, the better it worked. So it's not a matter of do you believe in the concept. It's not really open to interpretation.
Yeah, no, the concept's been around for a long, long time, and it is a proven concept. It's just, like you said, we have adapted to the limitations of a telescopic fork, and our riding styles have adapted to that being what we expect.
Yeah. And
so the behavior of that fork catches people off guard.
Rocco asked, accelerometer too or not? I don't know. I wonder if he's talking about the dyno. I mean,
well, I don't know. I know that I don't think the ShockWiz has an accelerometer in it.
I don't know. Maybe that's what he's talking about. Gerardo says, your spur's leaking fluid. Take it back to the shop. You got it, and just have them run through it.
Is it radiator transmission fluid or?
No, it's the spur. Some of them were overfilled, and so they leak a lot of fluid.
Out of the fork seals or where?
No, the shock.
Oh,
yeah, the shock was overfilled. I would take it back to the shop you got it from and have them service it, and it should be okay. If there's any issue with it, Rock Shock they'll handle it. Don't worry. All right. Matt used to ride downhill sections with the rear shock unlocked. Man, I hate it when this does that. Sorry. Unlocked. However, I've now noticed my times are way faster on most trails with shock and climb setting. Can you explain?
Well, the shock and the climb setting, that's basically adding low speed compression. And so what you might have is that settings building a platform for you to be able to push into the corners and not have the bike give away. But the problem is you need more ramp.
Yeah.
So the theme of this story is going to be you need more ramp.
Yeah. Yeah. If you got it dialed in a little bit better, it'd be interesting to know what bike are you on? What's your weight? What's your riding style? What pressures are you running?
Yeah, and you might, I don't know what bike you're riding, but if you're on a 160 bike, you might find if you jumped on a 130 bike, you went even faster.
Yeah.
Because if you're riding, if you're overbiked in a place where you need to pop out of the corners and kind of load in and get back out, that's what when I was riding the Trail 429 Enduro build, I noticed that there was no bike that compared to that one. It was, even if you had to check some big things and take it in places it really didn't belong, it was so fast everywhere else that I really dug it.
Okay. Do you adjust settings depending on large elevation and or temperature differences?
Air pressure. Other than that, I wouldn't really worry about it. But the pressure will change if you drive to the mountains. If you set it in the mountains and drive to sea level, that you'll see some changes under those circumstances.
So Michael said, so Cushcore's volume spacers for tires.
Correct.
In addition to rim protection, flat protection, for me, my experience is way down on the list. It is a volume reducer, which you get that same ramp.
Yeah. So here I'm going to give you a little trick on tuning of the tires that most people don't think about. So with the Cushcore, you have like the Pro Cushcore are a certain size. So that's how much volume you can take up in the tire. If you feel like you need to run less pressure for the circumstances, but you feel like you're kind of pushing through the tire already, if you're running 2 5s and you put 2 4s or 2 3 5s on, what you're doing is reducing the volume inside the tire. So that's like adding ramp to the tire. And if you can counter, if that allows you to run less pressure, you're going to splay out the tread, and you might wind up with a bigger contact patch than you had with the more voluminous tires. So there's, again, nuance. These are ways you can really start to geek out on maximizing your grip and even the way that your suspension responds.
And so to give some context, when he bought Cushcore, everybody was talking about it. He bought it. He put it in. He called me. He said, dude, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, I bought it because I got front flats at an enduro race. I lost the race because I got a front flat. They actually let me rerun the stage, which they're not supposed to do. They let me do it, and I got a front flat in the exact same place again. And my head about exploded. And a friend of mine said, dude, you got to run Cushcore. And so I went to he worked at a bike shop. And I went to his place and I bought the Cushcore and I put him in my bike just looking for protection. And when I started riding there were things that were happening and I couldn't explain them. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on here? And the handling benefits that came from the Cushcore and the bike were mind numbing. And what's crazy is my flat issues were in the front. So I would have been that weird guy running just one in the front when everybody's running just one in the rear. But for that reason, I put them both in. And I'm so thankful I did, because I might never have realized how freaking amazing they were. I mean, I've raced at races, not against Richie Rude by any means, but been there when he's riding. And when that guy comes by on the trail, it gets your freaking attention. I mean, that guy's hook and turns, and it blows my mind how the tire even stays on. Mm-hmm. And so for years he was running Cushcore. I had no idea, but it's like a cheating secret. Anybody who doesn't have them is just missing something. And I've heard people who are friends of mine say, just completely rip on them and tell me how terrible they are and how awful for the handling. And all I can think to myself is, I used to think this guy was credible, and now I think he's out of his mind because there's no way he can feel what I'm feeling and think it's bad. There's no way.
Okay, so Brennan says 25% sag with 3 volume spacers, or 20% sag with 2 volume spacers.
That's not going to be the difference. If you need 3 volume spacers, you need 3 volume spacers. And personally, I run 30% sag.
Boom. Victor, don't bring your shock pump, dude. We have shock pumps. Don't worry. More volume spacers or longer air spring in the fork?
More volume spacers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not quantity, it's quality.
Yeah.
If you get 130 millimeters right, if the ramp is right, it's going to be better than 160 millimeters where it's raw.
Brian says, are you guys covering any of this next Saturday in the class, or should I be taking notes and show up with at least some understanding?
You should be taking notes, and there will be a test when you arrive.
Oh, no, Brian, we're going to talk about it, but it'd be good. Take a few notes and kind of let it marinate in there.
Actually, just if you have questions, if you have specific things that you want to know, just take some notes for that, and I'll try to cover anything that I can for you.
So you said you took out a spacer on your Switchblade to 160 travel. Is that the same as a volume spacer or a different one?
No. There's on that particular fork, it was a 160 millimeter 36, but they put a restrictor in it so that it wouldn't extend to a full 160, and that's what made it 150. So you could open that one up and you could remove that thing, and then it would be a full 160.
Yeah, Ben's saying, are you suggesting fully open compression damping?
I am suggesting that, but only if your ramp is right.
Yeah, you got to have the ramp right, and a lot of or very little rebound damping.
Well, actually, let me. I got to be so careful. What I'm saying is, for me, that works the best. I don't want to say that for every person in every circumstance that's the best thing, because there's always a circumstance that comes up where somebody's like, you said do this, and I'm like, well, I didn't realize you were jumping off the roof of your house, bro.
You're so, I don't know if it's programmed, but like the conversations we've had about some of the comments.
I just see how people. Well, the drop's a perfect thing. Well, what about if it's a drop to a jump? Well, if we were talking about that, we'd have been talking about that, but we weren't. What about if the freaking airliner that's flying over your house drops the engine? Well, that'd be a bad day. But I mean, are you going to plan for that?
So, Chris, this is pretty funny. First time he did the waterfall in 2007, he almost ate it. Fox Vanilla, 200-pound spring. He weighed 230 and went to Radio Shack. For some reason, they had 2 rubber top spacers. Good old Radio Shack. I wish it wouldn't have went away.
Honestly, anything you can put in there that doesn't damage it is going to take up space. And that's the idea, take up some of the volume.
Diesel says, where's the Rich Drew? I don't know where the Rich Drew shirts are, but I got a Rob Drew shirt.
That's right.
You got one?
I got a Rich Drew shirt.
Oh, look at that, dude. He's got a Rich Drew shirt. I have a Rob Drew shirt.
Yeah.
I know I keep saying it.
My bad. It was a little bit chilly.
I know I keep saying it. Soon. Trust me. Give me another month or 2. A lot going on behind the scenes, man. I know it's relatively easy to get shirts going, but I got a business to run. So there you go. SM Gander asks, any experience with DVO? Been able to get the diamond to feel great, but the topaz has given me some trouble. I have a little bit. The demo Delano Peak that I first got was the comp build. It had the DVO stuff on it. It was pretty good.
So I rode some DVO stuff years ago. And at the time, I was a pretty serious rock shot guy. At the time, I thought it worked better than a Fox, but the trouble I had with it, with RockShox, I could literally set the pressure and never even think about the fork. It was always good, and I never had an issue with it. I didn't have to adjust it for different places and different circumstances, but I felt, and keep in mind, this is quite a while ago, probably 5+ years ago. I found with the DVO, I was always having to make adjustments. Like I would ride one place and I'd make some adjustments. It would feel really good. And then I'd go somewhere else and I'd be like, why doesn't it feel as good as it did over there? And then I'd adjust it some more and it would feel really good. And then I'd go somewhere else and I'd have to adjust it. And I just never felt like I could just take it out and ride it, and it was going to be the best. But that was quite a while ago. I know Fazari's got a pretty solid relationship with those guys, so I expect that I will be riding some of that stuff here in the future, and I'm looking forward to it.
So the other piece of that is we can only have experience with what we can get, and it's an interesting scenario. We don't have to buy anything right now. We have bikes that have suspension on them and they work. So I'm not going to buy DVO stuff. Are you going to buy DVO stuff? No. If there's an option for us to use something from DVO, we'll certainly do it. And again, that's one of those people ask about, hey, will you ride this bike? Will you ride that bike? Whatever bike's in front of me to ride, I'm sure you feel the same way. I'll ride it and tell you what I think, but I can only ask so many people to ride bikes, and some of them are awesome, some of them are not. And I get it. I mean, at the end of the day, now I can tell them, hey, you better let us ride your bikes, because we had 102 people live on YouTube. Who else is doing that? Let me ride your bike. Okay, we got a couple other good ones. How do you feel about MRP ramp control? I feel good about
I think
ramp
so.
control.
The great thing about the MRP ramp control, so if I want to change the ramp on my Fox fork, I gotta release all the pressure. I gotta take the cap off. I've got to either remove a spacer or add a spacer, put it back together, let the air out. With the MRP ramp control, it's a simple adjustment. You can do it on the trail. Yeah. It's a fantastic product. They're not the only ones who make that. I mean, there's other companies who make a similar product. The MRP ramp control is the one that I have experience with, and I think it's great. So I certainly do recommend it, because it gives you that adjustability without having to open the thing up.
And it's a small investment to make. It's not a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is good. I have a 2019 Levo SL Carbon Expert, just put on a 2020 factory 36 with the Fit 4 damper. I run 123 pounds of air, 2 spacers, and I'm 230. I feel the fork to be too flexy and not so plush. What should I do? I can answer this. Fox 38.
Yeah, I was just going to say either get a Zeb or a 38. And it's funny. I always rode the Fox 36, and I never felt like there was any deflection in that fork. If I rode a 34, I was uncomfortable with it. It just had too much give. When I'd load into a turn with steering input, the front wheel would kind of want to turn out on me. And I rode on last year's Firebird. I got a 38. Again, I got the Elite because I wanted the black stanchions because I think they work better. And I could not believe the difference. I didn't notice it when I was riding that bike. Like, it didn't feel uncomfortably rigid. But when I got back on my Switchblade with a 36, I could not believe how much deflection was in that fork. It was very unnerving, to the point where I would have liked to have a 38 on everything. So I would say, if you're a heavier guy and you can swing it, you will be very pleased with the difference between the 38 and the 36.
I got a Zeb for my SL. I'm not going to try to make that 36 work the way I wanted to on that bike, because it's a little bit heavier, and I'm going to overbuild the holy hell out of that thing. So Gerardo asked, would you run Cushcore on Santa Cruz Reserve carbon wheels?
Yes, I would run them on any wheels.
Yeah, the only wheel that
I'd run them in my car if they fit in my car.
The only wheel that I don't think it would make sense is the Zip Moto wheels, because those have unique characteristics built into them. So you're going to have them coming.
I have a set coming. I will try those out and see. But here's what I would tell you. So if when you're having that conversation, what you're talking about is flat protection potentially, or protecting the rim. But the handling benefits from Cushcore are the thing I'm after. I really could care less about the flat protection, because with Cushcore in my tires, I can ride out. I can finish the run. I mean, it's like a bead lock on your tire. Even flat, you can ride it.
This is great, because Paul asks, you only rate Cushcore. Have you tried any other inserts? Would you? So this is all
good story.
Yeah.
So
we only have 92 listings. So you 8 that left. 7.
Sorry, guys.
You're going to lose this. This is great.
The story we told earlier, how I found Cushcore, I got them. I was so blown away. I started just blowing up my social media with rave reviews of Cushcore. And
knew nobody at
Yeah,
Cushcore.
knew nobody. I just bought
You
them.
paid a lot of money
Here's
for
the thing. So after I bought the first set, I had 5 bikes. I ran out and had to go all around town to every bike shop to find enough Cushcore for all my bikes. I spent like $1,000 on Cushcore, and it was money well spent, I'll tell you. So this company reaches out to me. Should I say who?
Yeah. Well,
Okay, so a company called Tanis Armor reached out to me. They said, "Hey, we see you use tire inserts. We'd like to send you some of ours and see what you think." So the one knock I would give, not even a knock, but the one place where Cushcore can't protect you is a sidewall cut. And we get them in the droves out here. I've had so many times where I didn't even get one ride out of a tire and just slice. It looks like somebody cut it with a razor blade. And so I thought this Tanis Armor product, it's a casing that goes on the outside of the tire and a tube goes inside it. So I thought, oh, that's brilliant, because you could cut the sidewall and the insert is going to protect the tube, and you could chop the sidewall to ribbons and still ride it. So it really looked on paper like it was going to be amazing. So I get them, I put them in my bike, and I didn't get 100 yards on the trail, and I thought I was going to die. I don't know if you've all had a big wheel with plastic tires on the asphalt, how it just like, you might as well be on ice. So when you put any type of device against the casing of the tire, you reduce the compliance of the tire. You have no grip. And it took very little time for me to realize this design, for me at least, was absolutely not going to work. Now, I've heard people say that they think that that product's great. And the only thing I can think is you wouldn't know if it wasn't, because clearly you're detached from the sensation of grip to the ground. And that's one of the things that was such a winner about the Cushcore, is it sits tight to the rim. Mm-hmm. It's one of the reasons it's so difficult to install is because it's smaller than the rim. You have to stretch it on, and that's by design, because that tension holds your tire on the wheel like a rim lock, like a bead lock. And I don't know of any other tire insert brand that does that. And that is a key thing. Like, you can go get a pool noodle and stick it inside your tire and save a lot of money if you want. But these things were purposely engineered to be that way. It's not an accident. And it's not just something to fill the space in your tire. That's not the answer. And that's not the purpose. If you don't know the difference, maybe you're not a Cushcore customer, but the things they're awesome.
This message brought to you by Cushcore. Yeah, we are definitely now very hooked up and very tight with Cushcore, because
just like with so many other things, we started with looking for things to solve a problem that we had and paying for them. And when it turned out they work great, it was with Cushcore especially, it was important to me that I let people know, hey, dude, if you're not running these things, you're losing it. You need these. Get them.
And they're rad.
I even told several people before I had any relationship with Cushcore, go buy these things. And if you don't, go buy them, bring your bike to my house. I'll install them. And if you don't like them, I'll buy them from you. Never had to pay.
Yeah, they're rad. They're rad. The product is rad. The people are rad. It's just, it's a cool company.
Yeah. There's some few times when you run across a circumstance like that where all the pieces just fit.
Yeah. And
for me and Cushcore, that was definitely the case.
So Gerardo had a good question. Stock transition spur GX build. I'd change wheels. I'd put better wheels on it. The Industry 9 1-to-1 hubs. So like a Trail S or something like that, 1-to-1 trail wheel would be awesome.
Aren't those 101s?
They're 1-to-1. They were 101s to start, and they changed it to 1-to-1. I don't know why. Andre lives down the street
we'll have
from
to investigate.
He has a DVO Onyx SC you can try anytime, and a Topaz. So, Andre lives right down the street. Come down and say hi. I'm going to be here all next week.
Yeah, come on over, bro.
So we got mega shout out to Revolution Mobile Bike Repair. Yeah, I'll give him a mega shout out. Drew Kopp, he's the man. I'm actually going to go, when I get back, get on his Django. Very excited about the Django. What stem size would you ride on a 140, 130 trail bike?
Depend on the frame size, but
whatever length stem would get me far enough over the front to get the bike to handle.
Yeah. So what that brings up is smaller suspension bikes are getting more and more slack. when a bike is slack for me, that tells me I've got to run a smaller frame and a longer stem, because I need to shorten the wheelbase and lengthen my reach to put some weight on the front of the bike.
That's not a suspension question. As the moderator of this live session,
oh, sorry,
I have to stop you there.
We're getting into
okay.
different territory. That we'll cover
so
later
at Dawn We Ride says, could you run Huck Norris and Cushcore? He's tired of breaking hoops.
Bro, you need some different hoops.
That's gnarly.
Yeah.
John,
though he's got Huck Norris, which makes me think he rides at Bootleg Canyon.
There you go.
Which would explain why he's breaking hoops. That place is rugged. And I live in South Mountain.
So John,
that place frightens me, dude.
Yeah. John, Pink Bike is doing budget bike review. Thoughts on budget level suspension, fork shocks? How do these differ versus Super Deluxe?
Well, we kind of touched on it. We kind of touched on it earlier. Typically, what you get when you pay more is more adjustability, which brings more trouble to the average guy. The lower level stuff like Performance Elite from Fox or Select from RockShox, the stuff works fantastic. It just usually doesn't have the same adjustability. But once you realize the most important thing is ramp. Get your ramp right. Get your spring rate right. So when we talk about ramp, what we're talking about is spring rate in an air shock. So when you get that right, you're going to have less need for external adjustments on your compression and rebound. The real action's happening inside the thing. It's not the clickers you can click on the outside. And even the less expensive versions of their suspension, they work really well.
Yeah. I have a decent amount of experience, John, with lower level stuff. Every year for the last, I don't know how many years, I've had a lower level bike. Like 2017, I think, the Anthem SX came out. So it was a 110, 130, 27.5 wheeled, like aggressive cross country bike. It wasn't only one bike. I mean, the thing was 34 pounds. I rode the wheels off that. Like, I rolled up to Bentonville before I lived there and just punished a couple of those trails. One of them is the ledges. So if you know the ledges, dude, I smashed the KOM.
It has
on
ledges,
that.
I think.
It has ledges. I smashed
speculating.
I smashed the KOM on that bike, on a 34-pound bike with a Yari up front, and I don't even know what in the back. But I think you got to be realistic with yourself. You know, when I got the first Alano Peak, I got the comp build because I wanted the base build. I wanted a $3,500 carbon bike to essentially showcase to people, you don't need what you think you need. Because if you're in a position where you need that high-end stuff, you're not worried because you're not paying for it. It's being given to you. So you don't need what you think you need.
Well, and I think what you can find is there's a lot of places where you could save money to spend it on things that are much more sensible, like a quality drivetrain. I think that when you talk like the GX SRAM drivetrain, that cassette against the X-Dome cassette, I mean, you're maybe talking about a $300 or $400 difference, but the difference is stark. I mean, I've had some X-Dome cassettes go 3 years. I just keep moving them from bike to bike.
Oh, John. So hang on, Matt first. No, the Vittoria airliner inserts. Have you tried those?
I have not tried those.
We probably will, just because a lot of people are talking about them. Now, John says Cushcore XE versus Pro. Is there a difference in handling? There's a difference. Hang on, because I have them. Have you ridden them?
Yes, I had the XCs in my Mach 4.
You did?
Yes.
Okay. It's different. You have to run more pressure than you would compared to the Pro.
If you're running 2.1, it's usually an XC application. If you're running an XC, if you're running a 2.1 tire, you're going to have a tough time. Even if your name is Rob Drew, getting pros in those tires.
Yeah.
The rims are narrow. They're just not made to fit. But what you could do, if you didn't like the ramp of the tire with the Pro Cush core, you could put the XC Cush core. That's less volume in there. Now, I wouldn't do it. I don't think it's as effective. But if you were,
I would.
Yeah, you could do it. That's like a bigger or smaller volume spacer. It would be the same effect. If you're talking specifically tuning the air pressure in the tire, but I on a trail bike setting, I wouldn't do it.
So the second part of his question, in the form of a statement, he's been resisting because of all that added weight.
So here's what I'll tell
Come
you.
on, John.
I tried to run a double down on the back of my bike, and it felt like I hooked a 10,000-pound trailer to it. I put cush core in my bike the first time. I put them in my Firebird. I went and rode it on a day that I didn't really feel well. I don't know if I had ridden too hard previously, but you know, those days where you're pedaling up the first fire road and your legs are just not awesome.
How many donuts did you have?
I might have consumed a couple of apple fritters. Anyway, I was thinking to myself, man, I wonder if these things are adding like rolling resistance, and that's messing me up. And so I rode them, and I didn't have the pressure super low, so I didn't get the benefit of all the handling. But the very next day I rode my Switchblade, which is all things being equal, a more efficient, easier to pedal bike. And it felt exactly the same. Literally could not notice a difference between with cush core, without. And I've had people come over to my garage and basically say, the weight. And I take a box of cush core with the cush core in it, and I throw the box at them. And when they catch it, I explain to them, that's not an empty box. That's a box of cush core, because the weight's negligible.
And there's weight. There is weight. But what I say is the advantages far outweigh.
Yeah. So what I say to the weight is take some weight somewhere else, spend a little money on a carbon handlebar, do some sit-ups. Usually let's even say, and Rich's line is this, let's say it's 5 pounds you're talking about, which it's not. But how much of us could afford to lose 5 pounds? And really, if we tried, easily do it in a week or less. Just get on the bike and pedal. And so, weight's not the thing to be worried about. And you'll only make that statement when you haven't experienced the benefits.
Yeah. And John, John said, thanks for being honest again, because all his friends want the high zoot stuff. I think everybody wants that stuff. I rode a bike. I rode a S-Works Epic Evo, and it wasn't mine. It was somebody from Specialized. I got to ride it for a few weeks. It was $11,500 with the Axis stuff. Now, he's all into the Axis. It's cool. I think it's rad. I would like to have it, but I don't have it just because it hasn't worked out yet.
Yeah, if you don't want to have to buy it, don't try it, because it's pretty freaking good.
Yeah, it's the same with an e-bike. If you don't know anything about an e-bike, don't ride one. I have no problem telling you, don't ride an e-bike. Your world will be ruined.
It's quite
if
fun.
You ride an e-bike.
Yeah, I suggest the SL because it's much easier to get on an analog bike off the SL. It still delivers a little painful blow, but it's much easier than when you're riding a full-on e-bike.
So Josh talks about having a coil fork on a hardtail. Love the ride, but it has a very harsh, I think he means full extension.
Like a top out?
So it's topping out. Might be dial in a little bit more rebound damping, possibly.
Yeah, that's a situation where sometimes you have to add rebound damping to counter that issue. It's not ideal for handling, but that's one of the things I don't like about coil forks. The other thing is the fact that you can hear the coil jingling around inside the thing. But on most air forks, the top out is basically an air cup, and that's what dampens the top out, so you don't feel a clunk. There's a company called Vorsprung that makes a thing called a Vorsprung cap, and that's a fantastic. I only used it one time, but it was really, really good. I put it in a Lyric, and it was a tremendous addition. But I don't believe that coil is going to give you that option, because you're not manipulating the air. You're riding on a spring.
So we've actually caught up now. We're going to pretty much cap the question here. Rick's question: do you guys follow recommended manufacturer and service intervals?
I would say I don't, and it's not because I don't agree with them. I'm very fortunate. I've got a great friend of mine, Alex Petit-Demange, who's a Fox test rider and wonderful mechanic and engineer, and he's French. And that guy has been a tremendous resource for me. I'm comfortable servicing my stuff, but I'm so much more comfortable having him do my stuff for me, and he's always available to me. And so if I feel like my stuff is not even due for service, but it kind of needs that love. He's up in Sedona. So, he visits me a lot, or I'll run up to him, and he's so efficient. I mean, I can go to his place in the morning, and by lunchtime, my stuff's serviced and we're on the trail. So thankfully, well, I recommend that you follow their recommendations, but once upon a time, especially with RockShox, my thing was ride it till it blows. When the fork seals blow, it's time to service that thing. And sometimes I'd go a full season and I wouldn't, I'd clean them and sell them.
Paul said, thanks for addressing the questions about Cushcore, and he's probably going to do some. Follow our Instagram. So if you don't follow at the Rister, at the Rob Drew, we've had a code. Apparently the code is not functioning currently. I'm going to fix that hopefully tomorrow or the next day. So if you want a code to try out some Cushcore, shoot us a message at the Rister, at the Rob Drew, and we'll get it dialed.
And if you're in Phoenix or close by and you cannot get them installed, reach out to me. I'll give you some tricks. Okay. We had a Cushcore party here last night.
we had a Cushcore party. So VT Rips, how dare you? You bite your tongue. How dare you bring up flats versus clips? Should we let him in on what we're going to do?
Yes.
All right.
I'm going to ride flats.
I've convinced Rob to ride flats. So all 100 people watching.
Well, this is what I have to tell everybody. Like I've said before, when I was little and learned how to ride a bike, I was riding flats. That's how you start.
Live chat. I forgot the super chat.
Super chat.
John
Martinez. Thanks, buddy.
Dude. $5.
That's $5. He just bought my coffee in the morning. That's rad.
Bought my coffee, dude. So if somebody else gives $5, then you get a coffee. This is mine. I set this up.
Paul Cook in Australia. Can you help?
Bring him out there.
Yeah. Get me a ticket.
So we are going to go out and we're going to make a video at some point. We're going to try to do it Sunday.
Yeah.
We're going to put flats on the Levo SLs and go out and have some fun.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to chronicle everything because I've ridden them a few times and I have no problem saying I can do almost everything. There's few things like I got up the waterfall once on the Levo SL. I think I'd have a hard time getting up it on flats. Yeah. If I tried long enough, I probably could. But like he says, I don't want to. Like there's no reason to. So we're going to do it because everybody asks.
Well, Kai just posted a video doing it on flats. But if you watch that video and then you watch him do it clipped in, it's stark, the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's very different. And like you said,
well, there's so many things. It's not that I can't do it. I don't want to do it. I don't enjoy it. It's not fun for me.
Well, Martin, of course, he knows how to ride flats. We rode years and years on flats. When
I raced motocross for 10 years and I wasn't clipped in.
Yeah. And
I know how to hang on.
So it's something that we're going to do. And then what we're going to do is another one of these. So we'll make that video on flats immediately after. We'll do another one of these, and I expect it to be a bit more volatile because I'm sure people are going to throw out some zingers.
Yeah, so he said climb national on flats. That's probably what we'll do is we'll throw flats on and we'll roll up national. And sure, I'll struggle with some things. I may dive over the handlebars on my head a couple times, but I'll get it figured out. It's not like I've never done it.
Yeah. Yeah. Doesn't Alex have the KOM on Hangover?
Indeed he does. Newly revised
KOM
on Hangover. That
on an analog.
Full disclosure. That was the first time he tried to get the KOM. He rides all those trails a lot, and he never actually tried to lay down a heater on that trail. But after Mackie did it and made a thing of it, he decided to go back out and see what he had, and he had something. Turns out.
Alex has a lot.
That guy's tough to beat. I don't care who you are. If you want to beat that dude on his home trails, you are special because he's freaking legit. Yeah. And he's fit. Like the guy can pedal for days. He rides.
Crush baguettes like nobody.
And he can eat a baguette like nobody you've ever seen.
Yeah. Derek bought you a coffee.
Oh, thanks, bro.
There you go. So yeah, Rob will get some coffee on our drive to San Diego.
Diesel Derek. You're all right, dude. I don't care what Rich says about you.
Yeah. So we're going to end this hour and 14 minutes, of course.
I love everybody.
And we still need to get ready. We still need to
you.
get ready to go. We got to do some work on the
Yeah, I
bikes
got to
and get
move some
packed.
shocks around.
We're headed to not Santiago, Murrieta, Temecula.
Murrieta.
Got a cool ride series event we're doing and out that way. And then we got another one here in Phoenix coming up the 6th and the 7th. So we're scheduling more and more dates. So if you're out there watching this, a couple of things. Ride Series Clinic, we would love to have you come through. We do the how-to videos because not everybody can get there, but we'd love to have you to an event in Phoenix. There's going to be some in Dallas. There's going to be quite a few in Bentonville. If you want to get out to Bentonville and ride, we're booking a ton. Like March, April, I think is full. May's getting packed. On trail or ground school sessions, guiding, things like that. We're doing it all. So if you have any questions about anything Ride Series related, info@therideseriesmtb.com. It goes to the boss, my wife. So it will get answered, I promise. Follow along at the Rich Drew, at the Rob Drew. A lot of stuff on Instagram, a lot on stories. And I don't have the time to put those into highlights. So it's gone. After 24 hours, it's gone. But
Heartbreak.
I am prolific with the stories. So this weekend's a prime example. We're going to go tomorrow. It's going to be a fun drive.
We're chronicling stories on the drive.
He'll be driving, so I'll have the camera on him, gramming it up, and we're going to go throw the cameras on and ride Noble Canyon.
Noble, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to go ride Noble on the SLs. So we should have some cool content there, and you can follow along again on the gram. Anything you have to add?
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope we gave you some information that had some value for you and makes your riding more fun and enjoyable.
Yeah, and share. Do us a favor. Share the videos.
There was a lot of comments. If you posted a question we didn't get to it, just shoot us a direct message and we'll try to answer any questions that weren't answered. We're here for you.
Yeah, we're gonna try to do this more, but if you can share the channel so we can keep doing more of it.
Spread the word.
Yeah, the more
the
views.
love.
It's a bummer because the views are the views. I like the engagement, and the engagement's really good. But the problem is a lot of it comes back to subscribers, number of views. And so
politics.
in order to keep making these videos, we need funding to make these videos. Now we have some, like we're going to make some rad videos this year, but I want to keep doing it and I want to do more of these. So this dude, this isn't his job. This is my job.
Yeah, my day job's been infringing on my availability, so I apologize for that.
Yeah, so
I would quit if I could.
Yeah, but the more I can lure him away with the big bucks to be a YouTuber, we can make it happen. So yeah, hour and 17 minutes. Good stuff. All right, I think that's all I got. Drop some comments on the video. There aren't many, and there aren't many views. I'm bummed out. I thought a suspension setup would be like, all right,
blow it up.
Peace out,
dumpers.
Later, y'all.
Bye.
Peace out.